So this is my 2011 Ford F-150 with the 5.0 Coyote engine, 6R80 trans. Picked it up from Southern Virginia a few months ago. And I'm going to tell you a few things you can do to make your 6R80 last a little longer for free. As far as deleting the thermal bypass valve goes, to keep your transmission temperatures quite a bit lower, and also adding a little fill plug or a little drain plug to make fluid changes much easier and much cleaner than they are with the factory pan that just bolts on. I should have made a video of this as I did it, but I did not. So here's the drain plug I added to make fluid changes a lot easier and cleaner. When the trans pan was still full, I just drilled the hole up into the pan, a little hole to let it drain, walked away, let it drain out as long as it needed to. Then I came back to take the pan off. There are 21 of these bolts that go around the pan, around the front, around the side, and around the back. These ones back here are a pain to get to. I had to use a little 1/4-inch drive socket with a shallow 8mm to get them out. The rest you can get to fairly easy if you have a little impact gun or just a socket and ratchet. Then you want to drop your pan down, and your valve body will be exposed at that point, so you can go and take your pan out and drill a hole to whatever size drain plug you want to put in there. I used an adapter to neck down. It was like I guess a 1/4 pipe thread to this 1/8 pipe thread here where the plug actually is. I went with a 1/8 pipe thread because most of the aftermarket temperature sensors take a 1/8 pipe thread. If I ever want to check the accuracy of my factory gauge, and just thread a sensor up in there. But yeah, this is all brass hardware. It's like $3 for both at Lowe's. And then once you get your plug up in there, you can either use a MIG welder to weld it in. If you used steel hardware, I have brass hardware, so I just put a little JB weld around it, and it seems to be doing just fine. Next, you want to drop your valve body that's up in here behind the pan. So you take your pan down, get it out of the way, pull your filter out, get that out of the way, and your valve body will be exposed. And there's 11 T30 Torx head bolts that hold that in. You want to take those out carefully, support the valve body. It's very heavy, so it's hard to get it down there. But once you get those bolts out, you will want to come back here. You want to leave the valve body supported with the last bolt. And come back here to your transmission plug, right there. And this just has a little thing on it that flips up. That little plastic part right there. You want to flip that up, pull your plug out, pull the sleeve out that seals it, and then actually before you pull it out, you got to go down here to your valve body, pull down on a little plastic tab back here. You'll see it. It's just a little flat piece of brown plastic. Push in on the tab, pull that down, pull your sleeve out from that electrical connector, and then you're ready to drop the valve body. Take out your last screw holding it in, support it, and drop the valve body down. You want to check and make sure there should be 3 or 4 standpipes that go up from the valve body into the case of the transmission, depending on the year. You want to make sure those are still up in the case. If one's fallen out, just take it, push it back up in the case. It's not a big deal. And the thermal bypass, somewhere up around here, that will fall out with the valve body. Now, if you want to delete that for full-time cooler flow from factory, the thermal bypass does not open until the transmission temp reaches around 195 degrees. So when it's closed, you have no fluid flow through your cooler lines up to your transmission cooler. It's all blocked off until it reaches 195 degrees. Then it opens, sends coolant or sends transmission fluid through your coolant hoses up to the actual cooler. By bypassing that or deleting that thermal valve, you'll have full cooler flow. So from factory, the thermal bypass valve, it's a little greenish blue valve with a spring on it, and from factory it comes with the spring portion of the valve up in the case and the greenish blue portion of the valve down toward the valve body. To delete that bypass valve for full-time cooler flow, all you have to do is flip it upside down and put it back up in the case with the greenish blue part of the valve in the case and the spring facing the valve body. It's going to want to fall out, so I just put a little transmission assembly lube on it. It's nice and thick to hold it in place. You can use anything really compatible with a transmission fluid, like training assembly lube or Lucas stop slip, fluid conditioner, something thick like that to hold it in place while you wrestle with getting the valve body up in there. While you have your valve body down, it's a good time to check your lead frame or replace it if you want to. It's held on by, I think, 9 T20, I think it was, torque screws. T20 or T25 torque screws that hold the plastic lead frame to the valve body. You can quick pull that off, make sure your solenoids look good, make sure the contacts are all clean, and just go put your valve body in with your thermal bypass valve turned upside down. I don't remember the torque specs offhand, but you can look that up, or Ford Tech Make You Loco has a really good video that shows all this and explains it much more in depth if you're not as mechanically savvy. Once your valve body's bolted back up in there, you torque it down, put your pan back on with your completed drain plug and a new filter. Tighten your transmission bolts. Like I said, there's 21 of them, 8mm head. Like it says right there, the pan's equipped with a reusable gasket, so if you have an original Ford gasket, you can just clean it up and reuse it, and you're good to go. Then you want to come up here to this plug. That's your fill plug and your level check plug. It's a bit of a pain. What I did to fill the trans, had that out, pulled the dipstick out, and I just ran a little hose from the fill port here up over the exhaust manifold and the O2 sensor, up over the frame and out through the fender well, and put a funnel out by the fender and dumped it in that way. If you just drop the pan and drain it, replace the filter, it'll take about, I think it was 4 to 5 quarts. If you pull the whole valve body out, a lot more is going to drain out. It'll take about 8 to 10 to fill it up. You want to get about 4 quarts in the trans, start the truck, run it through the gears, meaning hold the brake, put it in reverse for a couple seconds, neutral a couple seconds, drive a couple seconds, so on and so forth. That'll pull the fluid up back through the trans. You don't want to really put more than 5 or 4 quarts in the pan when it's empty before running it, because it'll start to run out of that plug and make a huge mess. And then from there, you just keep adding fluid and checking it with the dipstick that's behind that little plug there until your transmission's at the right level, until it reads right on the dipstick. The other thing too, there is a magnet way back here in the pan. You can't see it, but it's back up there toward the back of the pan where that little circle and the couple lines are, there's a magnet that sits in there. When you pull your pin, you want to clean that off good and inspect it. Make sure there's no huge shavings or anything. And then what I did is I put a second magnet right around this plug at the lowest point in the pan. So any metal will get caught there or by the factory magnet. So since I've deleted that thermal bypass valve, I've not seen temperatures over 130 on the transmission temp. It's in traffic, on the highway, whatever. It will not get above 130 degrees. Now granted, it is like 40 degrees out here in January in Pennsylvania, but you'll have full cooler flow all the time. So not only does it run cooler overall, the transmission also seems to warm up quicker because it's allowing full cooler flow up into the radiator cooler. So instead of waiting for the transmission temp to cool or to warm up, because the engine warms up much quicker and the transmission fluids constantly being exposed to the cooler in the rad and the air-to-air cooler up front, it warms up much quicker and stabilizes its temperature around 130 much quicker. So I have to imagine that will extend the life of the transmission and the transmission fluid greatly. Because when I drained this out, this truck only has 70,000 miles on it, and when I drained it, that fluid was black as could be. So time will tell. If it helps, I can't imagine it would hurt. Having cooler transmission temps is always a good thing. The other thing, you want to make sure you refill it with Mercon LV fluid. Only use Mercon LV or an aftermarket brand that is, Ford specified to meet Mercon LV specs. So that's all, guys. If you have any questions, comment, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. But there's a couple literally free things you can do to make your 6R80 last longer, run cooler, and be easier to service with that drain plug, which should encourage you to service it more regularly. I think the Ford 100,000 mile trans service interval is insane, so hopefully this encourages you guys to change your trans fluid a little more often and keep it cool and happy.